Welcome back to Rochester Living with Mark Siwiec and Corey James Moran, brought to you by Elysian Homes by Mark Siwiec and Associates. This is episode 223. Mark, how are you?
I'm good, bud. How you doing?
Good. Very special guest, the Monroe County District Attorney, Brian Green, joining us this week. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
And we got a lot to get into.
Yeah.
Let's say a couple of years ago, was this even something in your head that this was going to be a position that you would find yourself in?
In all honesty, yes.
Okay.
When I left the DA's office, I always hoped to come back to the DA's office and hoped to come back in this position. There were a lot of things that I wanted to change about the office to improve the culture and morale and the efficiency of the office. So this was always a goal. I didn't know if it would happen or not, but I'd been working toward it for quite a long time, actually.
Certainly the circumstances, though, probably not something that you expected.
No, things have obviously changed over the last couple of years, and that sort of expedited the process.
Is there something about the name Green? I mean, I'm sure I'm not the first person to ask, but I mean, you're Mike Green's brother, correct?
No, people ask that all the time.
Do they really?
If I'm his cousin or if he's my uncle. No, we're not related. And we actually have a gentleman in the office named Scott Green, who also is not related to either of us, as far as I know.
Any other colors that we should be aware of? No?
I don't think so.
No? Okay. All right. So Green. All right. We'll focus on Green. You're enjoying it because it's been, what, 3 months?
Yeah, almost 3 months.
And tell us about that. How's it going so far?
I think it's going really well. We've had, as far as I can tell, a huge change in the culture and atmosphere in the office. People seem much more free to move to different floors in the office and talk to people and ask questions. People seem more free to come up to the 8th floor and get guidance on things. It just seems to be a significantly lighter mood. And we are now in the process of starting to implement change in the office. And, hopefully we can carry that cultural change through the procedural changes in the office and make it just a much more pleasant place to work.
So was that transition just things that you kind of had in mind, like you said, you've been thinking about this, so the things you wanted to bring in, how much feedback was there, with your employees as well of what they wanted to see?
I'll take feedback from just about anybody and synthesize it, and I've been doing that for about 10 years, talking with other people in the office, people who've left the office, criminal defense attorneys, judges who are friends of mine. I'm always interested to hear what's working and what's not working, and then try to figure out how we can fix any one or more of those issues, or how we can marry the issues and sort of create a new process. I'm open to that, and I'm around the office every day, floor to floor, talking to everybody, trying to get information from people or ideas from people and involving them in the process. The goal is not to build the office my way. The goal is just to build the office to a better place.
So you've got, I mean, you're wearing so many different hats. I mean, up until 6 months ago, you were on one side of the bench, a very, very distinct set of tools that you need and a skill set. Today, you find yourself in another role on the other side of the bench. And then on top of that, you've got to figure out how to be a manager. Do you have managerial experience, or is this something that you're just learning on the job and just absorbing a lot of information to be better as a manager?
A little bit of both. I've been in mid-level management on and off for years, but this is the first sizable office that I've run. We have 190 individuals working in the office. About 90 of them are attorneys, a little more than 20 of them are investigators, and the rest are support staff. So that definitely has a learning curve.
And an annual budget of?
About $25 million.
$25 million?
Yeah.
Okay. I would have thought you're doing a lot of work with $25 million.
Yeah, it's a small percentage of the county budget. Obviously, public budgets are always lean. We're actually going through the process right now for approving next year's budget. I was at the Public Safety Committee meeting last night at the county legislature. We have Ways and Means next week in the full legislature on the 9th to hopefully see our proposed budget approved as is.
With an increase?
It actually overall goes down a little bit. Most county departments are making small adjustments to try to keep the budget lean. But we are adding a few new positions. We've been able to tighten things up in some places in order to be able to add positions based on the workload that we're currently seeing.
Okay. And I think you might have some money, some additional funds coming from Governor Hochul's office. Is that right?
We regularly
discovery money.
Yeah, we regularly get state and federal grants. And sometimes those are in the budget and sometimes they have to be added later. It depends on when the grant award letters come in. But yeah, we receive a couple of $1 million for the aid to prosecution grant and a little less than that for the discovery grant, both of which are instrumental in us being able to sort of supplement or not supplement, but to be able to take on things that we might not otherwise be able to take on.
You referenced your former position, of course, with Irondequoit as the town justice. But let's dig in a little bit more about your past and kind of, how you got here, right?
Okay.
Because you went to MCC, I know
Yeah,
that.
how far back do you want to go?
Let's start there. Well, I don't know. I mean, did you always, what were you like as a kid? We talked to a lot of people on this podcast, and one of the themes that we've noticed recently are a lot of people sitting in that chair who very early on, they kind of had a fondness for what they ended up doing as adults. And I don't think that...
Not the case.
Okay. The opposite, sure. Yep. You weren't 7 years old thinking, I'm going to be a DA one day.
No. I had my fun.
Okay.
I had my fair share of fun, and I honestly didn't take school very seriously when I was younger. I went away to college in Pennsylvania first and came back after a year or so. And then I was in and out of MCC, but ultimately I got my associate's degree at MCC. And then I took more time off. I went back to SUNY Brockport. I'm a big proponent of public education.
Sure.
So I went right through the last 2 years at Brockport, but that was later on, and then straight to law school from there. And
when did that click? When it was like, all right, I want to kind of get locked in here and do this?
Basically, at about 25, I woke up one day and just said, you know what, I need to figure things out and get on a different path. And so I changed everything that year. And went back to school that fall and didn't look back.
There are some parallels almost with Judge Lindley.
I was just going to say,
Yeah, who, and he was very, very honest on the podcast 6 months ago, talking about the fact that he never went to high school. He lived across from high school because his mother was desperate to make sure that they actually got up in the morning, walked across the street, went to school, and he just sat around all day and then realized I've kind of screwed this up, and then very, very quickly became much more serious about his schooling.
Yeah, it was a big turning point for me. And when I went back to school then, in part it was that I was taking out the loans myself and having to pay for it for the rest of my life. And in part just that I was at a different point in my life, but I took school much more seriously then. Graduated from Brockport and from law school with honors, and really made myself more of an academic than I'd ever been.
That's great.
I mean, to the point now that you've taught at Fisher and MCC. You're on the other side of it. Again.
Yeah, no, I teach regularly. I've taught at MCC for years, both in the paralegal program and in their criminal justice program. And I've also taught adjunct at Fisher. Yeah.
That must be kind of interesting to connect with the students there. Maybe there's some that are not 100% on the correct path that you can kind of shepherd them over a little bit and say, hey, I've lived it like this too. You want to kind of get it together?
Yeah, I definitely try to do that. But college is also nice because there's a lot more of an expectation that they'll do what they need to do. So you can try to help people, but at some point you can say, well, look, I've tried. It's up to you now. You can sink or swim because you can't slow the whole class down. You have to make sure that you're keeping the class going for the individuals who are actively engaged and really trying to work hard and learn. So there's an interesting sort of dichotomy there that you have to balance. But honestly, I love teaching. I can't teach right now, and I wish I could.
Sure. Do you think you're going to be able to keep that up? Because in the coming year, you've got a backlog of hundreds of cases, and you are going to have to take on the responsibility for new cases coming your way. And we'll get to this in a little bit. On top of that, you're also going to have to campaign for election next year. So do you think you're going to be able to continue teaching in the way that I can't imagine?
No, when I took the bench in Irondequoit, I stopped. I taught one class after that, but I was working full-time and part-time in Irondequoit on the bench and then trying to teach, and that was too much. So I stopped teaching. My last class was in the fall of 2023, and I haven't gone back. And I don't see myself going back probably for at least a couple of years. I think...
but definitely in the future.
Yeah, I would love to go back, yeah. But I think I need to get things settled in the office and focus on that.
There you go.
We talked again about your previous position in Irondequoit. That's kind of, I guess it's not all that unique for this to happen, right? But it's certainly been a story in the news how you have to recuse yourself from all of these cases. I mean, how many?
Hundreds.
Yeah. Which might seem scary to people when they first hear that. Like, wait a second.
Yeah, so it's a normal function of the law. Attorneys deal with conflicts all the time. They come up in all kinds of contexts. And the judiciary law simply says that a former judge can't act as lawyer or counselor on any case that's come before him in his official capacity. So anything that I ever touched as a judge in Irondequoit needs to go to a special prosecutor. The short version is that the district attorney's office is a constitutional office. I can't delegate away that responsibility to someone in the office because it always actually comes back to me. Mm-hmm. So we have to have someone from outside take those cases. So we've got about 15 attorneys who are handling all those cases as special district attorneys who are appointed by one of the judges in county or Supreme Court.
But again, not that uncommon for that to happen.
No, not at all. It's just that this is on a little bit bigger scale than we usually see it.
Are they Monroe County based individuals who are being deputized as special prosecutors?
They almost all are. The statute says that it should be a district attorney from the judicial district that we're in, or it can be a private attorney who has home or practice within Monroe County or an adjoining county.
Oh, okay.
Most of the private attorneys who are doing this work for us are from Monroe County, but we do also have District Attorney Callanan from Wayne County and District Attorney Casella from Yates County handling some of those, two of those cases in particular that we thought needed to stay with the district attorney's office.
That's a lot of logistics.
You talked before about getting into your position and trying to change things around a little bit. Obviously, culture being a big thing. Was that the biggest internal challenge for you, or what do you think that is?
I think, at the time, I thought it was the biggest internal challenge, and it was certainly my first priority. And I think that was right. I think my gut on that was right. And I think we're seeing some good change. Now that I've been here almost 3 months, I think that the biggest internal challenge is going to be whether or not I reorganize the office, and if I'm going to, how I'm going to do that. We do expect, unfortunately, to lose a few attorneys over the coming months, and that might force my hand to think about a reorganization earlier than I'd hoped.
Just through natural attrition?
Yeah, and the political landscape in the region.
Okay.
There are some offices who are short-staffed who might be hiring some of our attorneys away.
Got it. Well, I mean, can we touch on that for a few minutes? I was overseas the day after the election, and it seems as if we're living in a brand new community. I mean, we woke up and it was a Democratic sweep.
Yeah.
Of so many offices, supervisor's office, et cetera. I think that's been brewing for a while. I would imagine that you were appointed by a Democratic governor. You're going to be running this coming year as a Democrat for election 2,
That's
the DA's office. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Sure. So I've always been a Democrat. I think that people like me as a prosecutor, as the DA, because even though some people might cast aspersions saying you're too far left or whatever to be a prosecutor, I don't think that has to be true. Protecting the office and being fair aren't mutually, or protecting the community, and being a Democrat aren't mutually exclusive, right? The job of the office is to protect the community. I've done that for most of my professional career, and I've been a prosecutor in one capacity or another for most of my legal career. I just don't think that has to. I don't think it has to be a political issue.
Nor should it.
If someone's going to come in and do the work well, I think that's really all that matters. So yeah, I'll be running next year as a Democrat, but my promise to the community would be the same as any other district attorney, that I'll make sure that we're protecting the community, but also that we're seeing the bigger picture and making sure that we're fighting for justice in a fair way.
It makes sense to me. I want to just go down the political road just a little bit,
Sure.
and then we'll get back to your role as the DA, and we'll get outside of politics. Do you anticipate any challenges on the Democratic side? Do you think you'll be primaried in any way?
Well, I'm hoping not. Obviously, aside from working in the office full time, I have to do the politics on the side.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't believe that I'm a natural politician, but I've been learning over the last 10 years or so. And I've been having conversations about that. And I'm hopeful that my position on things will keep me from having a primary. Um, there are changes to the practice in the office that we can make that I think would satisfy people on both sides of the aisle. So hopefully, by talking with people about those kinds of changes that I want to make, they'll see that, maybe someone who's sort of centrist is the right person for the job.
And if you think about, again, this title shift that took place a few Tuesdays ago, you've got a Democrat in the county executive's office, you've got a sheriff, you've got the clerk, and now for the first time in a long while, we've got the DA who is a Democrat. Do you foresee any opposition coming from the Republicans or from the Conservative Party?
I hope not. I've been trying to have those conversations as well, and obviously it's too early for anyone to commit to anything. But to be frank, the pitch that I've made is that people on both sides of the aisle have been telling me to do this for more than a decade, and change takes longer than a year. And if the office isn't to a contested election immediately, then I don't even have that year to make change because I'll have to be campaigning full time, basically. So the pitch that I've made is, give me a term. If everybody wants changes made in the office, give me an opportunity to make those changes. And if people aren't happy, that's fine. That's the way.
You anticipated exactly where I was headed, which is, how are you going to make these changes if you've also, So that's great. And hopefully that message is resonating with the Republican Party, with Don Mazzullo on the conservative side of things. So yeah, fingers crossed for you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
So, it's tough, obviously, but how do you balance, being tough on crime, specifically violent crime, but also kind of breaking these cycles as well? It's a fine line to walk.
It is and it isn't. On one hand, it's a fine line to walk because you want to be tough as nails as a prosecutor, right? People who've done bad things, especially, serious violent things or, large scale extortion or not extortion. Let me start that over. What's the word I'm looking for? Embezzlement. So, in part, it's a fine line because you want to be tough as nails as a prosecutor. You want to make sure that you're, going to bat for the community on especially really serious crimes, violent crimes, large scale embezzlement, things like that. But there are decisions that you can make that are based in law, which makes it a fairly easy decision to make. If someone's arrested, for example, we see commonly 2 or 3 people in a car with an illegal gun, and all of them get charged. And that is allowed in the law. There's a statutory presumption for that. But if we look at a case and we see that there's a clear constitutional violation, maybe that's a case that we shouldn't go forward on because we've all taken an oath to uphold the Constitution. So I think we can be a bit more careful about choosing which cases we go forward with versus which cases we resolve versus cases that we might actually not go forward on at all for legal reasons. I think it just needs to be a careful calculus. So when you have a legal basis to make that decision, it actually becomes an easy decision.
Makes sense.
And that was actually sort of exemplified recently, my, I think, second or third day in the office. Some of the attorneys in the office came to me about a homicide case that was in the news quite a bit then, when Mr. Coons was being prosecuted for a cold case arson that killed a young child. And during the course of preparing for trial, the attorneys in the office learned new information that they were bound by law to disclose to the defense and to the judge. And they came to me and I said, yes, you have to disclose it. It's required. And we all knew that the case would end up getting dismissed. And that's obviously not a case that we wanted to see get dismissed because the dismissal didn't hinge on the quality of the case, quality of the evidence, whether or not Mr. Coons was guilty or not. It was purely a legal issue. So we didn't want to see the case go that way, but we brought that information forward anyway, knowing that it was going to be dismissed because we had to. Right? It's a terrible decision to have to make, but because it's based in the law, that was actually an easy decision to make.
So what's the right balance then? Because what you're describing are blindfold laws. So what's the right balance between blindfold laws, which 98% of it, more likely than not, of all cases were pled out during blindfold laws, and not being able to know what evidence was going to be brought against you. Is that correct? And then there was reform, and now the pendulum seems to have swung in the other direction. So what is the right balance from your perspective? And actually, maybe you can just take a moment explaining the two sides of the issue, and then where you stand in regard to.
Well, I think the easiest way for me to answer that is actually just to tell you what my position on the issue is, and that is simply that we have to look at every case as an individual case, right? We have to actually do the work of digging into the case, finding out what it's about, finding out what evidence there is, what evidence there isn't, and whether or not, we might see anything pop up down the road, and just make the right call. When I teach, students often ask me about my job as a prosecutor and about cases that I've handled, and one of the things that I always ask them in return is, what do you think the job of a prosecutor is? And inevitably, people raise their hand and are like, to convict someone, to send someone to prison. And I tell them that sometimes that's what happens, but that the job is actually to do the right thing, to find justice. And justice isn't always a conviction. It turns out that it usually is. Our police officers generally do a great job. The vast majority of the cases that are brought to us are solid cases, but the job is actually to do the right thing. And so I tell the students that as a prosecutor, my job is to do the right thing on every case every day. And I think that's where people get into gray issues, right? You just have to dig into the case and figure out what is the right thing.
But you are also bound by state law, obviously, which was reformed, in 2019?
Yeah.
So do you feel those changes that were made in 2019 were appropriate? Do you think they went too far?
Are you talking about the discovery?
Yeah, discovery. That's exactly right. Yeah,
reform?
Discovery. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Because I want to get into bail reform also.
Because those three all happen about the same
time. But specifically discovery. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So it's funny because Monroe County always practiced an open file discovery policy. When I came up in the DA's office, we were told you turn everything over unless there's a very specific reason that you need to withhold something, like to protect someone's safety or something like that. So substantively, the discovery reform wasn't really that big an issue for our DA's office. It was procedurally that it was a huge issue because it tied the discovery to speedy trial rights and possibly dismissal of cases, right? So now instead of being able to turn something over 2 months into the case when it came to your attention, you have to be careful to go out and find every single piece right away and get it over to the defense attorney right away, because you can't even file a certificate that you're ready for trial until you've done that, until you've made good faith efforts basically to ascertain all discoverable materials and turn it over. So that was the huge problem for our office. But as far as being transparent, sure, there were probably people who may have held stuff back, but generally it was an open file discovery policy anyway.
Got it. Okay. Very good. So really, we weren't impacted here in Monroe County and the way other counties perhaps were.
Well, not substantively.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Procedurally, sure. It takes a lot more effort and a lot more time. We've had to hire a lot of new people in the office to facilitate it. So on a practical level, it's had a huge impact on the office. But, as far as being an attorney and doing the right thing, it really didn't change the office much.
You mentioned it, bail reform. Of course, that's probably one of the hottest topics.
Dear God.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
So I think that bail reform was necessary to some extent. And my job is not to criticize the laws, it's to just enforce the laws. So I try not to criticize the laws too much. I think it was necessary. It's possible that it swung a little too far, but we've seen some shift back. I think the thing people in the public need to understand about bail is that it's still true in New York that legally the only reason for a judge to set bail is to ensure someone will return to court. Right? Generally speaking, New York doesn't have a consideration for recidivism, for dangerousness, for the severity of the crime. It's legally only to ensure someone's returned to court. Now, in the subsequent reforms to the original bail reform, we've seen a slight shift back, and we do now have an exception for recidivism in certain cases. So we do have arguments that we can make to hold people in custody on charges that otherwise wouldn't be bail qualifying. But you do need to be somewhat judicious in using that. You don't want to be accused of abusing the bail laws, for example, because it's easier to have someone plead guilty when they're in custody than out of custody, right? You still need to be judicious about how we treat the defendants. That's the other thing that I think a lot of people sort of miss. People are concerned about victims' rights, and obviously we care about victims, right? That's why we do our job for the most part. We want to help the people who've been wronged. But once someone's arrested, then the rights of the victim, everybody still thinks about them, but they don't play a legal role. It's all about the rights of the defendant, because that's the person whose liberty might be taken away. Right? So we do have to be cognizant of how we're requesting bail.
Absolutely, but at the same time, you've got to weigh that against the safety of this community. And I, for one, there's still a lot more that we need to do to correct the laws that were created back in 2019. We still, to this day, have too many people who are committed crime. They're being hauled in before a judge and then being released, only then to find out 2 weeks later they're back before the same judge, being released yet again. So I am great. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I know a lot of people feel that way. That has to be a legislative fix.
Oh, absolutely.
So
Yes.
if people want that change, they have to be reaching out to their legislators.
So we're
and
talking to you,
change.
our representatives in Albany, in the state assembly, in the state senate. Do your fucking job.
Oh, wow, okay.
Do your job. It is incomprehensible to us here in Monroe County that you allow for us to be overrun by criminals in the way that you do. So yes, you're controlled by the machine in New York City, in Albany. Do your job for those of us who are here in Monroe County, desperate for a little bit more safety than you're providing for us. That being said,
Really teed it up there, didn't you?
I did.
So what do you think the biggest misconception that the public has about the criminal justice system? Is it what you just referred to, or is there something else?
Yeah, I think the couple of things that I mentioned are probably big ones that I hear on a regular basis. I think that the sort of culture that we've seen in the country over the last, 5, 6, 7 years has really cast law enforcement in a poor light. And I just have to say that, yes, I understand full well that there are police officers who either don't do a good job or treat people unfairly, right? But I do, in my experience now, almost 20 years in this industry, most police officers are very well trained and are very dedicated, and they try to do the right thing, and they do good police work. And when the exceptions show up, I have no problem taking that on. The office is not shied away from prosecuting police officers. I think DA Dorley probably prosecuted 4 or 5 during her time. And that's not something that we'll shy away from either. But I don't want it to be lost that, the few examples that pop up each year in the news I don't want people to think that that's the standard, right? Because it's not. Every day, those officers are out there putting their life on the line, and they're working hard. And most of them are very conscientious and very well trained.
They take a lot of heat, obviously, for, back to the legislation that has been handed to us as it's being enacted in Albany. And they really have become a punching bag in many ways for the frustration of this community.
Which leads to us not being less safe because there's less people that want to do that job.
Yeah.
And I think that's true of government generally. I think that there's a large mistrust of government that's come about over the last decade or so. And, we're seeing it in all sectors of government. We're having a difficult time hiring people. The county attorney's office is down, I think, 7 attorneys. Wow. We're down 6 attorneys. I know that other departments are having difficulty hiring too. It seems that some people just don't want to be involved in government right now. And I hope that we can change that perception and change the hiring problems that we're having just by, being out there and showing people that we're trying to do the good work.
Yeah.
What's your pitch to someone who maybe is on the fence, who could do that job? They're qualified, but they're kind of one of those people that are not quite sure.
Well, one is that, I'm not saying that private attorneys don't have a meaningful job. They certainly do, I mean, to be frank, the country runs on the law. It impacts everybody in every way, every day. But doing this kind of government work is kind of a special undertaking. You are representing everybody else who's out there. And, you're doing work that most people don't even think about, let alone think about doing. And you have to take some pride in that. So one is just, for whatever mistrust there is out there, if you believe it's a problem, then come be part of the change. But the other is, there are also, government generally pays less than the private sector. We all know that. But there are some perks that come along with that. Unless you're on trial, you're not going to be working 80 or 100-hour weeks like you might as a young associate in private practice. It's basically a 9-to-5 job. People do work overtime, especially when they're preparing for or on trial. But it really is a great place to work because of the pride you can take in the work and because of, some of the benefits that come with being a government employee.
Yeah, we do need to, in somehow or another, figure out a way to reinstill dignity in the role of being a member of the DA's office, as a Rochester police officer, as a member of the sheriff's department. I mean, yeah, it is sad. There is a lot of distrust, which is what you said just a few moments ago.
So if we're talking again in 2027, how will we know that things have been working?
Specifically with the district attorney's office?
With your role. You'll be there still, obviously. It's going to be one thing.
So I think one metric will be retention. The office has about 90 attorneys, and historically, at least for the last 15 years or so, the office has lost anywhere from a quarter to a third of its attorneys every year.
Wow.
And that's unsustainable in this type of practice, right? We need people in this kind of job who are experts. We need people who are willing to stick around and stick it out and be able to answer any question in the context. So my goal is to increase both recruitment and retention. And, for example, when I started in the DA's office, it generally took people between 2 to 3 years to sort of graduate from misdemeanor work and move on to felony work. But the people who had been in the office for 4 or 5 years before me told stories. Well, I mean, it took me 3.5 years. It took me 4 years, right? And for the last 10 years or so, people have been moving at an unbelievable pace. We've got people doing, serious felony jury trials as their first jury trial because they've moved up that much in, 12 months. And the problem with that is just that it's a job that you actually need to spend time doing to learn it all. We can, I'm going to implement new training programs, and we can train people till the cows come home, but there is a component of the job where you learn it by doing it. So we need people to be able to stay for long enough to stop that turnover.
I think your training program is brilliant, and it's much needed. And I think you were saying there's never been a training program?
No, I'm really excited about this. There's never been a training program for new attorneys in the office. And the last comprehensive manual for ADAs, take a guess when that was written.
1938.
Was I born?
82.
82.
I was not born.
Yeah.
Was it Howard? Was Howard there then?
No, I think that might have still been, well, honestly, I can't remember off the top of my head if it was still D.A. Kurlander or D.A. Rowland. But I have that manual on my desk as a reminder to keep moving on this project. So I'm going to hire or promote someone to be the new director of training for the office, and they'll be responsible for implementing a training program for new ADAs, a training program for rising ADAs who are moving on to felony work. They'll be responsible working with the administration for developing policies and procedures for the office. They'll be responsible for returning the office to a much more robust continuing legal education program. We still offer continuing legal education to all of our attorneys. We've been doing it at lunchtime after they stopped doing it the way I want to go back to. And the programming is great, but out of 90 attorneys, we have 15 to 30 attorneys attending them. And that's not enough, right? The whole office needs to continue their training.
Yep.
So we're going to return to Saturday CLEs that are mandatory, and you get 6 or 7 hours of training on a Saturday. And you get perks like breakfast pizza and coffee and lunch, but it used to create a sense of community in the office. I mean, first of all, people can complain about me making them do it, which they can all enjoy, right?
There's some bonding, right?
Yeah, exactly. But what it also did is it allowed the newer attorneys to meet the older attorneys, to get to talk to them a little bit more, to get to know them, and then they're not scared to go ask them questions in the office, right? It can be kind of intimidating, as a new ADA to want to go ask someone on the 8th floor questions about how to do the job. People have been there for 10, 20, 30 years. But bonding in that other environment allows for that, is on top of giving everybody a significant continuing legal education over the course of their career. And there are a few other things that director of training will be responsible for, but the idea is that it's probably the most influential job in the office for the foreseeable future, because it's changing the office for the future.
Wow.
So I'm really excited about that, and I can't wait to get started.
Congratulations on that, and good luck.
Thanks.
That sounds awesome. Can we go back a few years?
Sure.
You left in 2018.
Yeah, that's correct.
To take a job whose role and responsibility was to protect the disabled. Do I have that correct?
Yeah, that's
right.
right.
Tell us a little bit about what that but why did you do that? What compelled you, and what were your responsibilities in that job? It's fascinating.
Yeah, it was a really interesting job. So when I left the DA's office, I didn't want to stop being a prosecutor. It took me a while to find a job that still scratched that itch, so to speak, but was also a different environment. And I went to an agency called the Justice Center for the Protection of People with Special Needs. It's a state office, an executive branch office. It's actually a large office. When I was there, it was around 500 people. They operate their own 911 center.
Wow.
Because people across the state in various jobs are mandated reporters. So instead of calling 911, they're calling the Justice Center, and they're reporting abuse and neglect in whatever context it is they work in. So the Justice Center prosecuted administratively and criminally people who abused or neglected people with special needs who were in care homes, either run or licensed by the state. So we worked with 5 different agencies, including the Office of Mental Health, the Office for People with Developmental Disabilities, the Department of Education, and a couple of others. And, we would prosecute criminally people who were accused of abusing or neglecting people with special needs. So we had a lot of cases that were, of a sexual nature. And the difficulty in prosecuting those cases is that your victim often can't even speak.
Right.
Or they're cognitively delayed. And so you have to try to be really creative in finding and using evidence to prosecute those cases.
What kind of success did you enjoy in that role, in prosecuting these cases?
It's funny so they have their own staff of investigators, all law enforcement, well, not all of, mostly law enforcement, but also a little less than half, I think, at the time were administrative prosecutors. And they were really good at working with those communities and developing the evidence. And it could be, DNA evidence, or it could be, video surveillance from one of the homes, especially in the hospitals, on the mental health floors. But it's different than just knowing when something happened and going and grabbing a quick clip. Sometimes it requires days of reviewing footage to see a pattern and to be able to find when something actually happened, because the person it happened to couldn't tell you.
Wow.
So it was a much more painstaking job, but incredibly rewarding. Certainly difficult cases, and the Justice Center doesn't prosecute criminally anymore, but they do still prosecute administratively. And people can even be removed from eligibility for working from any of those 5 agencies in the future. So it's a wonderful program.
It sounds almost like a calling. I mean, it sounds like there was a passion on your part. Were you drawn to that in some particular way?
Not at first, but I certainly adopted that.
Yeah.
But generally, the people who work there are passionate about it. They really care about these people and protecting their rights.
That's noble work. And dear God.
I always find it really fascinating when someone has a job like yours where, let's be honest, it's heavy. It's heavy stuff, right? How psychologically, I mean, you go home, right? Are you trying to like turn your brain off and go somewhere else for a little bit? What do you do? I mean, I would imagine those things stick with you.
Yeah, I try. It's hard to turn it off, but I do try to keep a really good home life balance. Sometimes I have to work a little bit at night, but I've been pretty good so far now that I'm back about getting as much done during the day as possible so that I can be home on time. I think the latest until yesterday, the latest I've been home was 6:15, and then I might do some work later at night. Last night was a budget meeting, so we didn't get home till about 9:30. But it is hard to forget some of the things you see, especially if you spend any time on call. I was arson and explosion on call for 5 years, and I was homicide on call for 3 years. And, when you start seeing those things in person, it definitely changes you. It's a difficult thing to deal with, and for anybody who's dealing with those issues, and, I'm happy to say the same thing to anybody that works in the office. If you're finding that it is troubling you, there's nothing wrong with therapy. There's nothing wrong with talking about it to try to get it off your chest. And a lot of people are unwilling to do that or unwilling to talk about doing that.
They just think they're supposed to be desensitized and not have a problem. You're people.
But when you get desensitized to things like that, you get desensitized to the rest of the things in your life too. So it's really important for people to maintain their mental health. So I would urge anybody who works in this field, whether they're first responders, police, fire, medics, defense attorneys, prosecutors, I would definitely advocate for therapy if they feel like they need it.
God, love it. Like, I'm not sure if I've ever heard an elected official or an appointed official come, especially somebody who's running for office, come out and speak so boldly. But good
these
for
things
you.
that we see are terrible.
Yeah.
We see the worst.
Yeah.
And it definitely has an impact. Some of the homicide scenes that I went to, I'll never forget seeing the scene. That image will, live with me forever.
Sure.
And if that's going to be a problem for you, you definitely either need to find a new line of work or you need to find a way to deal with it, because those kinds of things can eat you up.
That's incredibly human. I'm so good for you for saying that. That's brilliant. And please continue running with that. But both in the campaign, but throughout the years, because I think more and more people need to actually speak up in regard to those types of issues.
Yeah.
Good for you.
What's your outlet?
Well, it used to be running and cycling, but I've had a series of injuries over the last several years. Right now I'm taking lots of hikes and walks with my wife. I'll continue doing that. We've always done that, but I do hope to get back to running and cycling in the spring. So
Okay, that makes sense. Kind of get in your own little zone. And
Where are you hiking?
well, we live in Irondequoit, so we're only about 3/4 of a mile to one of the sort of backside trailheads at Durand. So we often just walk to the trailhead. And Durand has so many trails that people don't even know about. I used to run half marathons, and I could run a half marathon and do 8 or 9 miles in Durand without repeating trails.
Wow.
Yeah, there are so many hidden trails. The park goes much further back than people realize. So we spend a lot of time there. But we actually like going out to try new places. I love the Finger Lakes Trail, especially that section that's on the other side of the gorge from the main part of Letchworth State Park. And my wife's never hiked that, so I think at some point soon we'll probably go and I'll introduce her to that trail because it's just a beautiful, secluded trail.
Yeah, I've discovered over the course of the past 3 months just the zen and the beauty of walking my dog Lily. We bring her out onto the golf course across from the house, and 45 minutes, and I don't bring my phone with me, and it's just I clear my mind. I love it more than almost anything.
Yeah, it's great. We actually spend a lot of time on the golf course at Durand in the winter when the snow allows for snowshoeing and skiing.
Yeah, unfortunately, I know the members of the club, are probably going to want their club back come April 1st or something. So yeah, I'll have to cede my enjoyment back to them. So
just be careful. Just got to duck.
No, yeah, right, exactly.
If they yell forward, don't look up. Down cover.
Thank you for that. I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Sure, little tip. Do you want to ask about what he's watching? We always like to do this, right?
Yeah, you go right ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, do you have time for shows and podcasts and things?
Yeah, my wife and I try to make a point of that.
Okay.
But we're always behind.
Sure.
So she had previously watched White Collar, and right now I'm going through White Collar with her.
I don't know.
I don't
what
know,
color. Yeah.
It's a con man show from probably 10 years ago
Okay.
or so. We love the shows about con men.
Do you steer clear of crime shows? Or is it
No, not at
Really?
all.
Okay.
No, and actually, I used to read a lot of nonfiction, but for the last 10 years or so, I read almost exclusively crime thrillers.
Interesting.
Really?
Yeah. I'm starting to get back into more traditional fiction now lately. But we just watched a movie over the weekend, The Roses, based on the book The War of the Roses.
Okay, yeah.
It was dark, but it was hilariously funny. We really enjoyed that. But every night we'll watch an episode or two of something. Yeah.
That's great. What do you have on your
Let's see,
docket?
Landman's back,
Okay, and
which is really good. Have you watched that at all?
no.
Not yet.
Billy Bob Thornton's in it. He plays Billy Bob Thornton like he does in every role, obviously. But he's basically, one of the top guys for this big oil company. And there's cartels involved, a lot of action. It's very entertaining. It's
Yeah,
cool.
it's been recommended to me.
Yeah, I like it. So I think we're 2 episodes into season 2 right now. They're doing the thing where they only release it once a week. So we're kind of going back to the old model versus just being able to binge right through.
Right. Yeah. I just started the Joaquin Phoenix film Napoleon because I'm finishing up the
Yeah.
biography.
How many hours is that?
The film itself, about 2.5 hours.
All right, that's not bad.
Not bad at all. It's okay. I mean, I'm glad to be watching it because it is bringing to life that which I've been reading about for the past month or so.
Can you separate him as, not Joaquin Phoenix? Or is it tough? I mean,
No. I'm actually able to because he's so dark and so dour in
He's
this.
one of those
in this
method
particular-
actors, isn't he?
Yeah, he really is. So I'm enjoying that. And I've got 2 or 3 that are on sort of. Actually, you mentioned one the other day. The Claire Danes.
The Beast in Me.
Yeah. So that's
Really good. That's on Netflix.
probably
Yeah, okay.
that and. It's not Polaris. What is the other one? Apple TV. Anyway, there's a couple that we'll be watching, and it's great because this is the time. Actually, what I'm looking forward to more than anything is picking up the Andrew Ross Sorkin book on 1929.
You mentioned this, yeah.
Yeah. So I just got. It's a time of year when we can actually indulge in this kind of thing because before we know it, we'll be back at it. So anyway, any parting words for us? Any last thoughts? Anything else you might want to bring to the table that we haven't discussed?
No, just thanks for having me. It's nice to meet you in person and get to interact like this. It's a great show.
We look forward to working with you through the years. Yeah, congratulations on the appointment and good luck in the year to come. I have no concerns about your ability to find yourself instilled in this office for the next few years.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
That's
Thank
awesome.
you. Thank you for watching and listening. We'll talk to you again next week. Good. Awesome. Well done.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We will edit out where I turn to you and then you're like, so we'll edit that out in post.
Did you grab the one edit? Did you time that? Okay. Where he restarted?
Yeah. Do you guys, I don't think we talked about how the new election works. Is that something we touched on? Right,
Oh yeah, we probably didn't, but I'm not sure if we can go back to it.
You want to hit, or are you good?
Yeah, no, thanks, bud. I
Okay.
think that's fine. Yeah, I think that's so inside baseball. That's the kind of thing that
Yeah.
the general public.
it's
Thank you.
academic.
That's awesome.
Cool.
What do you have to do? What do you have to do now?
I have to go back and approve pleas, and then I'll probably go home a little bit early today. I think I'm going to close the office a little bit early. So,
Oh, good.
yeah.
Nice.
You? What are you doing?
Headed home. Tell my parents.
Yeah.
Gonna be on the road.
Oh, that's right. You said you were driving down there.
Yep.
Yeah.
I grew up in Endicott, New York.
Oh, okay,
near Binghamton.
Yeah.
So a couple hour drive
Nice.
with me and my wife and my 3 kids under 6.
And how long are you gonna be gone?
We'll come back on Friday.
Oh, so it's really quick.
Yeah. Courtney loves going to my parents' house.